Okay, guys. So, hello everyone. Thank you so much for your time and joining us for this presentation. My name is Nick Tashion. I was the project manager for our team XGridZ. So let's jump right into it. So, as an instructor institution, have you ever looked in the market for an AAC device and just found them to be way too expensive, or maybe not on the same platform that you desire, or maybe it was just too static or outdated for you to actually look into it? Well, this is where a product like XGridZ can come in, and let's show you what it can do. So before we jump into what XGridZ actually is, we have to talk about what AAC is, or Augmentative and Alternative Communication. And Professor Lee actually mentioned it, but it is a communication tool that is used by speech language pathologists to assist children that don't have maybe the right speech tools or have disabilities like autism or drome. And it's a tool that will help them improve upon their speaking skills um, and improve upon that. So before we can even jump into even developing a product like this, we have to take a look and see what's available on the market. So we had to do a lot of market research on a product that does AAC work, and we found that applications that are currently on the market are either exclusive to one platform or they come with very, very expensive in-app fees. We noticed that a lot of these products that were currently on the market had ridiculous fees, some of them even upwards of up to $300 a year to use these kind of applications with these subscriptions. Other things we noticed were that these applications didn't even have like customization options, or they didn't address customers' needs. Like some stuff were on the App Store, and the App Store would have comments of like, "Hey, is it okay if you can add this feature?" And then the product was just outdated and it hasn't received updates since like iOS 7 or whatever. So we noticed that there was a big market for improvement in an app like this. So what even is XGridZ and how does it relate to AAC? Well, XGridZ is an application that assists speech language pathologists in AAC evaluation, and the application caters more towards the interests and attention of students, while at the same time we make sure that they get a proper assessment. So it uses all of the AAC like regulated tools, and XGridZ is an app that eliminates the pressure that students may feel during an evaluation. So it's very, very user friendly. Like it uses very, very childlike images, so it's nothing to scare someone and make it worse, while at the same time providing accuracy. So we make sure that we record relative data. And at XGridZ, our job was to improve the current AAC evaluation metagame and add a lot of customization features for students to use. So what makes XGridZ better than what's on the market? Well, when we were in the development process of XGridZ, we were looking at the market and we wanted to make sure that we would make something that's more universal. So this includes the app's ability for customization, like I mentioned, and platform diversity. So we made sure that we chose something that would work kind of for both iOS and Android. And we also wanted to make sure that it didn't have like in-app fees. Obviously, it's a project, but we saw that that was something that was really, really widely used on the market was just a bunch of in-app fees and lack of customization. So our design approach was, since we wanted to tackle both of those concepts, we ended up picking Flutter, which is a framework for Dart that's developed by Google. And this powerful language allows you to code in one language, in this case Flutter, and it would work for both iOS and Android devices. So this was kind of like the perfect solution we found. And we were able to run this application and test it using Android Studio. And Android Studio is great because it has like a bunch of built-in Android emulators, so you can emulate any tablet you want onto your computer. And similarly for iOS devices, you can use MacBooks to simulate iOS devices. So we decided that we're going to pack 32 images with the app, and these images are going to be randomly picked during the evaluation and can be expanded upon using our custom image adder, which I'll go over later in the demo. So in our demo, we're going to be showcasing the user generation and deleting, the grid customization layout, the custom images adder, and a sample evaluation test along with its results. So let's go ahead and jump right into the little demo video. And please let me know if you guys can hear it right away, please. All right, hello everyone. This is going to be the live demo. Can you guys hear that?
Yeah, we can hear
Yep,
that.
we can hear
Okay,
you.
awesome. For XGridZ, right now I have the tablet open. This is an emulator, and this is currently a Nexus 10 emulated tablet, and I'm using Android Studio as my IDE that has all the build files for our project. So jumping right in, this is what the app looks like when you start it up, and we can see that inside of our virtual emulated tablet that when we open up our XGridZ app, we are presented with this page. So this is the main page, and we have two options here at the bottom, and that is to add a user and delete a user. So that's going to be what we're going to be doing before we jump into the main key points of the project. So let's go ahead and add a user. I'm just going to name the user Nick, and then as you can see, it generates a user inside of this little box right here. So we're going to continue to add a couple more users, and as you can see, it changes based off of who is selected. So if you want to delete a user, you then just click on delete user, and that will go ahead and delete the user. So let's jump right into it. I'm just going to pick Nick right here, and then we're going to jump right into our start screen. So this is basically the key page for our entire application. This is where all of our tests are going to be generated. Currently, we only have one subtest, and that test is to pick the picture that is prompted to you. That's a list of that's a list from typical AAC tests, but we only got to pick just one. So we're going to showcase that one test. And this is the key mechanic of our application is the ability to customize these grid values, how many images are going to be present on the screen at once, the number of grids, which is also just the number of questions that are going to be asked. So we have customization options for those, customization options for the vertical columns, and of course the rows as well. Right now we have it limited to between 4 and 8. That's because when we go over these values, it doesn't really look too nice on the tablet. So for simplicity's sake, we're just going to roll with 4 by 8 by 4 being the max. So let's just go ahead and take an exam real quick just to showcase it. So you just pick these values, or an instructor in this case would pick these values, and then they would hand over the tablet to a student to take the exam. So it's a basic exam, but this is what speech language pathologists use to determine what's going on with the student they're evaluating. So if we say find a seal, and then we got just a bunch of pictures here to pick from, because we did a 4 by 8, um, we're just going to go ahead and pick wrong. And as you can see, it was red, indicating that it was the incorrect choice. But in this case, if it's prompted to find a orangutan, for example, uh, picking the correct choice would be noted by green. So we're just going to continue with the exam. We're just going to do some wrong, do some right. Where's the cat? There's the cat. All right. So we got a 3 out of 5. And the results screen will give you information about what it is that the student got right or wrong. So in this case, red denotes that the answer I chose was incorrect. So I picked cow when the correct answer was seal. And then orangutan is green, which means it was correct. And then dog, the correct answer was hippo. And then baby and cat, we did good on. So returning back to the homepage, just to showcase another key implementation that allows for more customization and more options is the custom image adder. And this function allows us to go into the device's library of photos and upload any image we want. And we can add that to the pool of images that are selected when a user begins the test. So when the test begins, the program jumps into the folder with a bunch of images. If we added an image, it'll be thrown in there too, and then it'll grab, depending on what the size of the grid is, that many amount of pictures. So if it's a 4 by 8, then it's going to grab 32 pictures to fill out those 32 square boxes. And then when we have more images, then it just makes the pool larger for randomization and more customization in general. So let's showcase that real quick. So jumping into our photo library on the tablet, we have two images saved that I saved beforehand, one of a deer and one of a goat. Now, if you were paying attention, these two images were not inside of the data sets. So let's go ahead and pick the deer, and we're going to name it. This is the name that's going to pop up whenever you actually are prompted for during the exam. If I want to delete it, I can hit this delete button and it will get rid of this image. Let me show that off real quick. So get rid of the image and allows you to pick another image. And then boom, I'm ready to go. I pick the image. I have the name of the picture and I also have the type. So once I'm set, I can just hit upload, and it lets me know that file was successfully uploaded. So let's add another image. Let's add the goat as well, just to see, just to increase the likelihood that we'll see these two pictures. And then let's go ahead and just take a test. So let's leave it at 4x4 this time, but let's put 10 questions. So immediately we see the deer. It was randomly selected and it became the first item on our list right here. So, but the picture's asking for an orangutan. Let's see if our goat is here too. It doesn't look like it. So continuing on with the test, you can see that more items are showing up that was in our pool of new items that we added. So the goat is here now. Um, and the question was for a sheep. So baby, whatever car. I just wanted to see if we get lucky here and it actually asks for something we just uploaded. Let's do it again, but this time with more questions. Or, yeah, just more questions. And again, it's random, but usually doesn't take too long for us to get a little lucky. There you go. So find the goat, and then the goat is here, and when we click on it, it's part of our list. So that's pretty much it for XGridZ. Obviously, there's a lot more we can add on to it, like subtests, more subtests, and for a couple more things that I'm going to talk about during the presentation. So thank you guys for watching the demo. Okay, so that was the demo. Jumping on, again, I mentioned in the video, but our key mechanic of the project was just the ability to customize the grid system and add the ability to add your own images into the system. So like I showed off in the demo, it's the customization was our key mechanic. And then again, like our previous team that presented, Professor Chaya in our senior design course gave us a bunch of add-on features to throw in, but it wasn't meant to go on top of our MVP, which I just showcased. It was meant more so for us to make mock-ups with potential updates to go on top of what we currently have. So jumping into the first request from the shareholder, it was we needed to add a new way to export results data. So currently, the way the system was made was that it would just show you your results screen at the end. He wanted us to make another method of maybe exporting that data through like email or a PDF. And then the other one was to save user settings and data. So handling user settings and data, we had to add a bunch of user settings into it. So this would be things like visual identification or like a speech assistant. So like when it would say find the baby, it would actually have like a voice read find the baby. And then the exporting part of it was how do we pull out all this data and then put it into like a PDF and export that data directly out of the system. So that was a little bit tricky, but we made like a kind of a design layout of how it would look if we were to actually implement that into the system later on in the future. So this is a very, very detailed list. It tells you a whole bunch of data. And then it led on to our second lab, which was basically the importance of data and how important it is to showcase data whenever you're presenting your app to people in the outside world. Data is an important part of all software. It's basically what shows other people that, hey, this software really works and here's data to back it up. So we implemented a relational database model and that used MySQL, and it would keep track of things like the student ID, the name, the age group of the people that were taking the exam, and then it would keep track of their test scores along with like the date they took it and then how many they got correct out of the total questions they had selected. So here's just a quick picture of like what our database was like would look like. So we have the student table and then it would lead off to subtables like test 1 and test 2. Here's some more data that we pulled out using MySQL, and here's an example query request we used, basically showing off the student table, what it would look like, and then how those student IDs map to test tables. Here are some charts, and the basic idea is just how much you can do once you generate a lot of data. Like you can make pretty charts, you can look at all the analytics, like these ones over here where it says that, oh, 34 out of 60 students scored less than 60%. Again, this was using mock data, so it's not actual data taken from the app, but it just goes to show what's possible. And then the final lab was based around security. So the struggle with XGridZ with security was that we didn't even have like a login system. So in order to make our app secure, we first needed to add a login system for instructors to use. And then the login system would handle like all the login requests and then the hashing and stuff. We decided that we were going to use another database called the database was called Firebase. And Firebase is, again, it's developed by Google, so it worked really, really well with Flutter. And what Firebase is able to do is handle the login information, allow third-party login options like Facebook and Twitter, allow things like Google CAPTCHA. So it's a very, very powerful system to implement, and it handled all of that stuff directly for us. And here's an example of just the Firebase like main page and how it was handling the data stuff. Here's an example of a login page we implemented. And then this is our user case diagram, basically showing all the steps it takes for like a user can take when they're actually taking and using XGridZ. Here's a list of all the technologies we use for this project. We use Dart and Flutter, and those were our main development languages. iOS simulator was Xcode. We used Xcode to handle the iOS side of things, and then Android Studio to handle the Android side of things with the emulator that I showed off. The research was all done using AAC Evaluation Genie, which was kind of like our mock application that we like cloned essentially, and Google for tons of research on what AAC is. We used GitHub to do version control of our project, and we used Google Drive to share the images that we used in the application. For communication, since this was all done through online and virtual learning, we never actually met. We used apps like Discord, ShareX for sharing images, Jira for tracking all of our sprints, and Gmail for communication, and Slides for the presentations. So what's the next steps for XGridZ? Well, the next steps for XGridZ is to continue working with the stakeholders and implement what we are working on theoretically to change XGridZ from what it is currently as an MVP to an actual product on the market. And XGridZ, here's my closing thoughts, is that XGridZ has been by far one of the most challenging projects we've ever worked on. Just taking the challenge of learning a completely new language along with its IDE to implement ideas asked for by a client has been very, very difficult, and we've learned a ton from it. And just that everything was online and virtual, that made it a lot more difficult as well. And that is it for XGridZ. Do you guys have any questions?
Sure. As far as security, you were mentioning it was challenging to implement. Did you do something with it, or what was how you addressed that particular need?
Yeah, so the challenging part was that we basically made the whole MVP without the concept of, oh, we actually need someone to log in and we're going to keep track of like login data. So it was something that we had to kind of add on like from scratch. And the actual implementation was just like the front end login page. And then we would just mess with like little code snippets using Firebase.
And then securing the data stored on the student tests, was that encrypted in the database, or?
Yeah, so the student results page was in the previous lab, so it wasn't a part of the security lab. But when we used MySQL, that stuff was encrypted. So like student names and stuff, that was encrypted.
Okay, to protect their results and all.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if there are any other questions from Mark.
Just a little bit on the development aspect of it. Can you give us an insight into how the team was set up and how the work was divvied out, and also how much of the existing framework was there? I know you highlighted it in your demo. It seems like there was an underlying engine or framework, and then you loaded on top of that.
Oh, no, everything was from scratch. So we used Flutter and we made everything from scratch. But as far as the workload, I was the project manager of the team, and we had a scrum master and developers just like the previous projects. And that's just the setup of the class. But all in all, I want to say it was just a total team effort. Like, it didn't matter if I was a project manager. Like, if one person needed help developing something, I would jump on. If the scrum master needed to tell me something and, oh, the sprint, we're not completing this on time, what can we do? We would talk to the professor and see what we can do. Like, maybe we'd have to completely axe like a feature he wanted. So overall, I want to say it was a complete group effort.
Okay, so all that programming that we saw, the matrix that you had, and how you loaded the matrix and the selection, you guys programmed all of that. Wow,
Yes.
that's very good. And then as far as versioning between applications, I mean, so there's a specific instance for a user, and then they save that off. Can you describe how that would happen?
Yeah, so basically they would make it, you would make a user account, and then that data and the test would be stored onto that user account.
Okay. Very good.
And so that user account would be, so I was trying to understand too. So we have the student data, and then you have different speech pathologists or individuals conducting the tests.
Yeah, so, well, it's going to be for children, right? So we wanted to separate the login part from the children part, since we didn't want that kind of responsibility. It just didn't make sense. So the login aspect would be the instructor would log in, and then in their profile would be the users of their students.
And then they only have access to the students that they've tested.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So for the assessment that you guys were doing, I mean, say there was a speech pathologist that wanted to test the same material to multiple students. Is there a way to share that in the architecture that you guys had developed, or is it purely just customized to that particular student teacher need?
Oh, you mean like if a instructor were to have a set of customized options, would they be able to like export that to another test?
Right.
That would be something that we would like to add in the future. Yeah, that sounds awesome. But currently it would be every time you were to take the test, you'd have to customize it.
Got it.
Oh, thank you for all the good questions in chat ask. And so I totally agree, like the parental control and on software on the web system and become more challenging and in the last year. And I personally, saw like how software iterated through in last year and trying to add all these features. But yeah, anyway, good job and the first XGridZ team. And that's a pretty nice presentation and the work you have done.